All right, everybody. Welcome to what's going to be kind of our video series for GIMM350. We're going to cover a whole bunch of game development in the Unity engine. Also, obviously, including coding using C Sharp. I feel like the best way to handle this, and the way I've done it before in class, is through the creation of just a game that will make kind of through class through a bunch of different series videos that I'll be submitting or making available throughout the semester. So please follow along with these. For this, I am using as what we've decided in class is going to be Unity 6. So the version is 6000.0.55. That's what I'm going to be using for this. That's what's installed on all the machines in the lab. So recommend using it. It's not a requirement, but just realize that if something isn't working right, it could be a version issue. So you may need to switch to it. Otherwise, we're not going to be doing anything overly crazy with this. So most versions should work. There might just be some small changes and workarounds. So the one thing that I do recommend, and I've said this in class, but I'll just want to reiterate it here, is please, 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 once you've settled on a version of Unity, do everything you can to not actually change that version during that project's lifespan. So that's where it makes the most sense to use the LTS, the long-term support versions. That gives you the longest support with that specific version that's going to keep it from breaking if you try and update it to another version. So we're going to go ahead and we go back to projects. I'm going to create a new project. Obviously using that one, and we're going to use Universal 3D. Make sure I'm 100% sure I want to go with that. You have a lot of starting ones with it. Let's go with the Universal 3D core. We don't need high def. We're not going to be going that high. If your project requires it, obviously that's something that you want to go with. And I'm going to name my project GIMM350 2025. And this will go into, I'm going to actually store this on a drive that actually has a little bit of space. 350 2025 GIMM350 2025 in class. Even though we'll specifically be doing this in class, this is the in-class project. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and put it. And go ahead and create that project. Getting Unity started always is the slow part, so I'm going to actually pause here while it's building for the first time and pop back in as soon as it is ready to get going. Alright, so finally, after way too long, we've loaded up. My screen might look a little bit different in layout wise than probably what yours look like. I've created my own layout based off of how I like to see my layouts and get access to the different pieces that I use all the time. So I have my main scene here where I can also I'm always digging into project settings for one reason or another, preferences, and we'll often use the package manager to add things in. So I keep these all here in main. The game scene is not very, honestly, I don't use it that much. pop back and forth as needed. If I need more space, it's as easy as dragging those around. I like having my hierarchy right here, easy to use, with all my project files and folders here. Usually make sure that these are actually just in a list form, a little easier to work with. And then I take the lazy route to a lot of debugging, so I'll use the console log a lot. And so I'll put this here just to make it quick and easy to see what messages and notes are coming through on the console, and the inspector over on the side here as needed. All right, so in the sample scene, we're going to set this up, just make sure that we are dialed in for if we need to save or build this. So we're going to go to build, edit, build, or I'm sorry, file, build profiles. And this is changed a little bit in 6. We're going to set it for Windows. That's what we want it to be. I will be putting together a video in the not too distant future, or it might not even be a video, it might just be links to some videos for how, if you are building on a Mac, what you need to do to actually make this play onto your build files, play on a PC, because that is going to be a requirement of the course. And so what we want to at least make sure in our scene list is that the scene that we want to make sure, so this one's just called sample scene, that's we're just going to leave it at that for ease of use. We want to just make sure it's in our scene list. That way, if it's there, we're good. If this wasn't here, we could add it to it. We could delete ones that we don't need. But right now, we're just going to leave it there. We'll make sure that it's... And everything else, usually for the most part, in here at this point in time, can just stay constant for our platform settings. So as long as those are there, we're good for the moment. We'll just close this. And when we actually get to building, we'll come back to that. All right. I am going to start with, for this we need to, we're just going to kind of, for this video today, we're going to implement some player movement. I'm going to go with a third person player rather than a first person. So we'll attach that camera behind the player. And then we're going to also put everything through what is, I always still refer to it as the new input system. It's really not, it is definitely not new any longer. It's just the most recent version of the input system. So we'll go ahead and put everything through that. It's kind of a nice, robust system for doing movement. I believe Ted should have taught you guys that. If not, this won't be a refresher. This will be a new one. So we'll do that. And then the other big thing that we're going to do, we'll add in shooting, because we're just going to kind of base this off of a shooter of some sort. Obviously, that can be switched out for the needs of your game. We'll look a bit at collisions, looking and seeing kind of settings for that and how that works. And then we're going to end by doing our first design pattern. A design pattern, for those of you that's a new term, is a coding term, and it's the best way to describe it, it is a way of doing coding that can be reused, and it's a pattern that's used in lots of different situations to do something specific. And in this case, it's going to be we're going to be using the object pool design pattern to do object pooling, and that one pattern really helps to improve performance and reducing memory overhead by reusing any objects, or using objects, let me change that, reusing objects that we're going to be consistently needing in the scene. And so in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to attach it to the bullets that we'll be firing. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to reuse that bullet rather than constantly creating and destroying new bullets, which once again is going to help with performance and memory issues. And so we're going to set that up for that. That's going to be where we're going to get to in this one. So let's get moving with that. To begin with this, we're going to go ahead. We need somewhere for our player to run around on. So what we're just going to do is we're going to create go up here in our hierarchy. We're going to create a 3D object, and we're just going to create a plane. And this plane, let's just go ahead and call it a floor. We'll change the name to floor. And that's kind of small at the moment. So let's go ahead and then in our inspector for the floor, we're going to set the scale to 10. That's going to be huge, but it's fine. 10 by 1 by 10. So this is going to give us a nice big playing field for us to work with. We can place some things as we go, thinking about more for a long-term strategy than short-term. And so that gives us, once again, somewhere for our player to go. We're going to also go ahead, as part of the inspector and part of this plane, we have a tag and a layer. We're not going to mess with layer right now. Layer is going to come into effect not always, but is often kind of related to physics in some way, shape, or form. Once again, it's not always, but it's some interactions putting things of the same type on those same areas. And then tag attaches it to another way of referring directly to this object. So, we could tag this as a player, which obviously we wouldn't, or the game controller. These don't make sense, but we can make our own. So for this, we're going to actually make this a layer because we are going to be kind of using this for physics a little bit. When we check at a certain point, we're going to add jumping to the player, and we don't want the player to just be able to jump at any moment in time. We want them to only jump when they're on a ground, when they've touched the ground, right? They've landed back down, and then they can jump again. If you wanted to allow them to double jump, that would be a different situation. But we're going to just only allow the player to jump when it's on the floor. So we're going to actually set this layer. We're going to change this. We're going to add a layer to it. You can see it uses a few different layers. I still don't know why it uses 0, 1, 2, and then skips 3 and goes to 4, 5. But we'll just use 3 because it's here. We're going to set this as environment. This is going to be part of the environment. So anything that is environmental, we can put in this layer. At a certain point, maybe we might want to modify this, but for right now, this is going to be good for us. We have environment in there. You got to come back out. It doesn't automatically do it, but now environment is there as an option. And so we're going to go ahead and set that layer now to environment. All right, so we got some place for our player to move around on. Now let's go ahead and just add what's going to be considered our player. We're going to, once again, on the hierarchy, we're going to hit the plus to go ahead and add the 3D object. We can also just right click in here and choose it. We're going to go ahead and add a cylinder is what our player is going to be. And let's just rename it player for now. if you want to focus on it, because we're pretty far away from that player right now, if you hit F, it's going to zoom in to our player. As you can see, our player is halfway through the world. We don't want that. So we're going to move that transform up. We can chew it either by dragging, which is pretty consistent, or we can actually just here in our transform set that to 1. That way our player is where they should be, just above the floor. We are going to set, like I showed you earlier in our tag, we already have a player tag, so we're just going to apply the player tag to it. And we are going to give the player its own layer. So we need to set up another one. We're going to call it player. Once again, this is because physics is going to be affecting our player, and we're going to set it up that way. So once again, you got to go back out and then select that. So now, cool, we got a player in the scene. If we were to play this scene, save the scene for a minute, we're going to play it. Even if we had movement to the player, it wouldn't matter. The camera is off the player. The player would just move outside the camera view, so we don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and change that. I just realized when I hit play, I don't know if everybody does this or if it's been covered for you before, notice that everything goes red in my screen. All the tabs, everything has got a red tint to it. And that's the reminder to me that I'm in play mode, and if I were to make some changes, they're not going to stay when I leave. So if you want to set that up for yourself, if you go into your preferences and then go to colors, and if you scroll down to general, you've got this play mode tint, and so you can set this to whatever color you want, and this allows you to have that visual cueing that you're actually in play mode. I find it really helpful for that. Some people don't do it, so it's up to you 100%, but it is there as an option. Okay, let's go ahead and attach that camera now to our player. That's as easy as dragging the main camera down and adding it as now a child to the player. And we're going to set this, because now whenever we move, that camera is going to move with our player. And so we're going to go ahead and we'll set the position. This position is now based off of how it is on the player. So we'll do like a 0, 2, 5. That's a little too far. Let's make this. Oh, I'm sorry, -5 is what I meant. Sorry, my notes and reading are a little hard, as you all know. So we're going to do -0, 2, -5. And you can dial this into exactly where you like. And then I like to, because it's above and behind, I like to just change that rotation down a little bit, so you kind of have that top down look and feel to where the camera is. All right, we've got all this. I'm gonna also, in our assets folder here in our project, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna minimize that one because I just don't want to see the packages at the moment. And I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna create a new folder, and I'm going to call this materials, because while it's really it works technically, a gray player on a gray ground just isn't the easiest to see, especially for my tired eyes at the moment. So we're going to create the folder materials. We'll double click into it. We're going to right click in here, and we're going to create a material, and we'll change the new material to player, and I'm going to just go ahead and choose for this here in our base map. I'm going to choose green. You can choose whatever color you want for your player. I'm going to set it up kind of that looks good. Nice green. And then I'm just going to drag that. You can drag this either onto the player in your scene or into the player in the hierarchy. And that'll just change it to that, make it nice and easy, and handle it that way. All right. So now we've got a green player on a gray plane. We can hit play. It's not going to do anything, right? We need to actually be able to add some movement to the player. And so we're going to use, once again, the new input system. It is actually built in. I didn't realize this. It's been a hot minute since I've used Unity 6, but it is built in to Unity. If you go to the input system, it now shows that it's here. But we're going to go ahead and update that to the new version of it. So I'm going to hit update. I'm going to let that run, and I will come back as soon as it finishes up. I'm sure it's going to take a few moments to do so. All right, that actually didn't take as long as I was figuring it would take, but now we're updated to the new system. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to pop back here to scene and window. I want to find it's here somewhere. Hold on, let me find it. Okay, so things always keep changing. So we no longer need to worry about opening up a specific window for our player input. If we go into our project settings and we click on our input system, we actually have our input actions here. We can rename it if we wish. We can just leave it as it currently is. It's already in there. We're not going to be creating multiple schemes at this point in time, so we're going to leave it just called this. We have a action map that's tied to our player and to our user interface. What we're going to care about right now, the most part, is our player. And if you see, we have built in, and I'm going to put that in really big air quotes, but built in move, look, attack, interact, crouch, jump, previous, next, and sprint. These are built in potentia. They are not connected to anything yet. And so while we have move and it's tied to being able to do WASD on the keyboard or the left stick on the gamepad or a primary 2D axis on an XR controller or a joystick as well, it's not connected to anything. So what we need to do is go ahead and connect that. And so we're going to do that twofold. We're going to go ahead and add a component. And if we type in player input, this is going to give us our input manager. We could choose from this default scheme keyboard, mouse, or gamepad if you want it to be tied directly to that. You can also have it auto switch, which means it's going to change back and forth depending upon which one's used. For the UI input, we don't need to worry about that right now. For camera, we can go ahead and drag our main camera into the camera. And we want it to be able to send messages through the behaviors. And it's going to state specifically are things here. So like on look, on move, on crouch, on jump, all of those are there. So even this doesn't fully get us there. We can do our player, sorry, set our default map to player. That's what we're going to be using right now. But this still doesn't get us across the finish line to actually being able to move. We actually going to have to go ahead and write a script for that. So let's go ahead and create, once again, a new folder. I like to keep my scripts in there. So let's call this scripts. And into the scripts folder, we're going to create a new scripting mono behavior script, and we're going to call it player controller. This is where we're going to put in all of the player controller behaviors that we want and need. So once that gets through to its loading, we're going to go ahead and come in here, double click to open it up. We need to let it know that we want to go ahead and on top of using Unity Engine, we're going to be using Unity Engine dot input system and using Unity Engine input system dot controls. That allows us that. We're going to also create a few variables that we're going to use. I'm going to use serialized fields. I'm not sure if y'all have really used much of those yet. A serialized field allows for a private variable, and we'll just call it a private game object that we're just going to call player with a lowercase p. So normally when we're setting up variables, right, we have, for the most part, you're using public and private variables. A private variable does not show up in your inspector, whereas public does and allows you to make changes with that. Serialized field actually now allows us to use the inspector for connecting that variable to whatever it's attached to, but once again keeps it acting like it's private. So that's what we want to do for this. The other thing we're going to do is another serialized field. This is once again be private. These are going to be floats. And we're going to do two floats. You don't need to do a separate line for every single one. If they're all of the same type, you can just write them in a list. So we're going to do movement speed. Oops, got to spell speed right. And we'll do a comma to make it clear that we're adding another variable, and this one we're going to call rotation speed. For this, we also, because we're doing movement, we're going to do a private vector3 that allows it to move in 3 directions, up, down, left, right, forward, back, or X, Y, and Z. And we'll do movement direction is what we're going to call this variable. And finally, we need to get a reference. I'm going to set this as public. It could be technically a serialized private, but we're just going to do it public. We need to get a reference to our input action reference, and we'll just call it movement. This is what's giving us the call to the movement section of our player input. All right, for this, we don't need to worry about anything in our start yet. We're just going to go, we'll add to update in a minute, but we're just going to go ahead and create a new function. We're going to do void player movement. Right, we want something to be able to move with, and so we're going to set our movement direction variable that we already grabbed as equal to movement.action, right? So movement is our input action reference, so we're calling to that. We're going to movement.action read the value, and as I'm going to bounce real quick, over to it, in our move, we can see that it's a value. So we're getting a value, we're passing a value, so we're reading that value, and it's a vector 2. That's because the joystick is only moving in those two directions, up, down, left, right. And so that means that we're going to be looking for a vector 2 is the data that we're getting from this. And then we're going to move the player. So we're going to do a player transform. Right, we've got a reference to our game object player. We're going to do player transform. And we're going to translate, which means basically moving over time rather than just jumping. We're just going to technically slide the player. And we're going to do this now that the player game object in the world is in a 3D environment. So we need to be moving it now, once again, in a vector 3. Once again, that gives us our up, down, left, right, forward, back. And we want to have it be forward. And we're going to multiply this. We're not going to ampersand it. We're going to multiply this by our movement direction. So this is the movement direction that is coming in from the read value, right, that vector 2, and we want the y, which is our forward, back, or on the control stick, or tied to the same thing in the W and S keys. And then we're going to multiply this by our movement speed variable, which we have not defined yet, but we will. And we're going to multiply this finally by time.delta time. What time.delta time does is moves this over time. It's not going to jump. It's going to calculate that distance and move it a certain amount based off of the speed, based off of the frames that are happening. And so then we're going to also allow for the player to transform its rotation. Rotate. It's another vector 3. This time is going to be up. That's just the direction it's rotating. We're going to rotate it based on the movement direction. Once again, the red value here, but instead of in the X, or sorry, in the Y, we're going to go by the X. The left to right movement on that, either control stick or A and D on the keyboard. We're going to multiply it by our rotation speed, and once again by time.delta time. So with this, we need to know in our update, every frame we're going to be reading the movement direction. And so we're going to just send a call here to player controller. So every frame, not player controller, just kidding, I'm so sorry, player movement. We're going to be calling our player movement function. And this is going to allow us now to be going ahead and moving. Go ahead and save your script. I'll drag mine over so I have a little bit easier time grabbing it back if I need to. And now, if we select our player, we can now drag our player controller script here. We're going to drag our player into the player game object. And then we're going to, let's see, what values do we want to add to this? Let's give our movement speed a 5. Nothing crazy, but not too slow. And let's go ahead and have our rotation speed faster, right? It's a little bit faster to rotate and spot than it is to move forward an amount. So we can have that rotation speed. It also makes it a little less frustrating. These both can be dialed in to whatever you would want them to be, but we're going to stick with those for the moment. And then in movement, this is where we're getting that input action, right? So here's our action maps. What we're going to do is we're going to click on here, and it opens up with, I'm going to drop this down so it's a little easier to see. We have our different action maps. So we've got player and UI. We care about player. And then we have our different actions here. We care about move. And so if we double click on the move, that brings us in here. And now if we go ahead and save our scene and hit play, we now are able, as you can see, rotate and move forward and do both at the same time. So now we actually have that input system set up and working for how we want it to be. Once again, those speeds, movement and rotation speed, can be dialed in based off of what you want. These can be hard-coded if you want them to be hard-coded. However you want them to be, it is possible that way. All right. I don't want this video to get too crazy, so we're going to save jumping for a later time. Another video, we'll get to that. We play with maybe some different jumping styles that we can add into this game. So for right now, we're going to not worry about that. We're going to go ahead and make it so that the player can shoot, and because I want to get us to that design pattern of the object pulling, because that'll be a good spot for this and tie into a lot of things that you could be doing in your projects. So let's go ahead and add a gun that the player can pick up. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a 3D object. We're going to just make our gun out of primitives. Let's go ahead and we'll just add another cylinder here. And let's just go ahead. We can set its position to 0, 0, 0. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees so it's pointing forward like a gun would. And then we're going to shrink it down a bit. Let's do 0.65, 0.5, and 1. Let's see what that looks like. That still does not look great. So let's go ahead and shrink this down even more. Let's shrink it a lot. Let's go to 0.2. And 0.3 and 0.2. What does that look like? That looks much better for a gun. Let's go ahead and then also we're going to right click on the cylinder and we're going to do a 3D object. This is going to immediately make it a child of it. So it sets its, even though its scale is 1, it is not a 1 by 1 by 1. It's that within the scale of the cylinder. So let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and move this back a little bit, move it down a little bit, give it that look of kind of a handle, lock it there. I'm going to use R and press R so I can change my scale through this. I'm going to go and shrink this. Let's call it, yeah, it's about good that way. I'm going to shrink this one too. I'll just call this, I'll call it 0.6 and about 0.6. Why not? We'll call it there. Hit W to go back to being able to move it, bring it back, and you know what, let's make this a little taller. There we go. And we'll just call it 1.3. You don't have to go to the exact values like this. I just tend to like working in values that style. All right, there's a nice little quick primitive gun. We're going to go ahead and add one more piece to this one. We're going to the cylinder, we're going to go ahead and add an empty. So an empty is just, technically it's a point, right? We have it here. It's just kind of a nothing there. It's a reference point that can be used for a lot of things, and that's what we're going to use it as. We're going to rename this launch point because we need a spot where the bullets are going to come out of, and so we need to launch them from somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We want it in front of the gun so that it doesn't automatically collide with the gun. And we want to actually put it out a decent amount. There's two different reasons, or you can handle this in two different ways. When a bullet launches, if you're moving forward faster than the bullet launches, you can actually collide with the gun as well, which automatically either destroys the gun and the bullet or just destroys the bullet, depending upon how you have it programmed. Um, or it bounces off, it just does some weird stuff. So you can either then move that launch point forward a good amount, or you can increase that launch speed of the bullet, but then that has other effects down the road. So I tend to just kind of make sure there's a good amount there. It's a dialing in kind of thing. You'll want to play with it a bit to see what works best for you. And then we're going to, instead of calling it a cylinder, we're going to call it a gun. All right, and we'll do that. And then, I mean, once again, we're working in grays. Let's make a new material. We're going to right click, create material. We'll just call it gunmetal. And then let's go ahead and, I don't know, let's make it slightly bluish. Because why not? And then we're going to actually go ahead in our metal map, we're going to just make this thing look metallic. We're going to change it up to 1, and then our smoothness, maybe not all the way up to like completely reflective, but we'll go with pretty reflective. And then we'll just drag that onto the whole gun. All right, now we've got a gun for our scene. We are going to do, for this, we're going to not worry about doing his pickups, but we'll play with that later. For now, prepping for that, we're going to add another folder to our assets folder. We're going to create it. We're going to call it prefabs. These are going to be items that we use that over and over again in different ways. So we can use this one as the gun that the player is always holding, or is holding if they have a gun and bullets active, but also can use this as a pickup for the player if they are, if we want to, have a, you either pick up the gun originally by picking up the gun as it floats in the air, or you pick up more bullets by picking up other guns. So we can do that. So we're going to go ahead and just drag then the gun to our prefab folder, which automatically adds it there. For this one specifically, we're going to actually now child it to the player, because we want the player to be holding a gun. And we're going to go ahead and bring it here off of the player. We're going to set it off to the side just a little bit. Once again, because this is a third person perspective, we want to just kind of barely see it. We don't want to bring it off too much, because we have to remember then it's going to be offset a little bit. So shooting straight is going to then have it be just off the side of our main player, right? So we could counteract that by rotation, but that's going to get tricky to a certain degree, because the rotation would then affect on the distance it's going. So we're just going to leave it straight. We're just going to leave it just over here off to the side of the player. All right, we've got that now. Let's go ahead and create a script. Actually, we should probably create a bullet first. Let's create a bullet first real quick. That's quick and easy. We're just going to right click on our hierarchy. We're going to make a 3D object. We're going to make it a sphere. That is a beach ball compared to our gun. So we're going to want to go ahead and shrink this down. Let's just make it about the same size as that barrel was, which was about 0.2. So we make it 0.2 all the way around. We can just kind of verify that that looks close enough. That looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and then change from sphere to bullet. And let's go ahead and add a new material. Create material in our folder. We're just going to call it bullet. And I don't know. We're going to go with a nice red bullet of death. Why not? And then we're going to crank up its metallicness a little bit, make it a little smoother. Yeah, we'll come all the way up in smoothness and turn our metallic down just a little bit. That looks kind of cool. All right, and then we'll just add bullet to our bullet. And we're going to drag our bullet to our prefabs folder, which gives us a reference to that. And then the cool thing that we get to do now that it's part of our prefabs, we can delete this from our hierarchy and we don't lose it, right? We can just bring it back in whenever we need to, which makes it nice and easy. All right, we'll go ahead and save. Make sure you're saving often enough to make sure that you're doing it that way. Okay, let's see here. The other thing that we want to do, we want to actually, so we've got now a bullet, right? If we go into the inspector, we see it here. If we double click on this, it actually brings us into the prefab and we can actually make changes to it. So the one thing that we're going to want to do is we are going to be setting this up for our object pooling. So bullets are never going to truly go away. They're going to forever be there. And so we actually want to make sure that what we do is set the bullet to start out as not being active. That it's, even if we brought this into the scene, so we'll save this here, save. We can come back out to our prefab. So now if we drag our bullet in, it's just showing us it's there. It still lists it here, but it's having it come in set active as false. So we can turn it back on as we need to, and that's going to set us up for keeping our bullets in the scene, but not visible all the time, only when we want it to be. So we're going to go ahead and do that. All right. The other thing that we want to do, getting ahead of myself, like usual, let's go ahead and dive back into our bullet. We're going to be adding a rigid body to this because we need to add physics to it. So to add physics, we need something to add that physics to. So we're going to add a component, and we're going to type in RIG, which brings up rigid body. We're going to go ahead and add our rigid body. And in this, we're good with a mass of 1. You can play with these as you need to. We don't want gravity. You could use gravity if you want. We're going to not choose to use gravity. This way it won't drop. It's just going to go straight forward, which is great. And then we have the collision detection. And we've got discrete, continuous, continuous dynamic, and continuous speculative. If you do, this is one to kind of keep in the back of your mind. If you notice that you're doing some form of a shooter, or you've got some form of a collision going on, and that collision doesn't trigger for some reason, right? You're shooting a bullet at a barrel that's supposed to explode, but it never explodes, like it never is taking damage. You're going to probably need to come in and play with your collision detection. Actually, not probably, you're going to need to come in and play with your collision detection. So discrete collision detection is really set up for slow moving objects that are going to collide with each other. So this is good for kind of a moderately moving, slow to moderately moving speed-wise player. You could use this on a slow bullet. You could use this on two objects that just don't have much speed that are going to collide. Um, but what ends up happening is it's really only checking every frame with this. And so with discrete, if your bullet is moving so fast, it's traveling a large distance during that frame whenever it's checking for the collision. And so it may never actually trigger the collision because it acts like it teleports through the item or the object that it's meant to be colliding with. And so if you've got a faster one, you're going to want to use continuous. Now these are the high, when you move away from discrete and you move into any form of continuous, these do become more taxing on the system. Nothing crazy, but they do. So continuous is going to definitely be for faster move things. If you're still noticing a problem with it, continuous dynamic is even more paying attention to every like moment in the traveling. And if that actually doesn't do it, you can actually choose continuous speculative, where the system will actually look into the future and see if a collision is going to happen, and then base the collision off of that information. For this, we don't need to go anything that crazy. Continuous should be perfectly fine for us. But once again, if you're noticing that collisions that you would expect to happen are not happening, this could be why that is happening. All right. And we're going to also go ahead and, as we did with the floor, we're going to create a new layer. Because once again, the layers are really for physics related things, and the bullet is, and collisions are physics related. So that's what we want. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to actually name this bullet. And then we need to come back out to our bullet and assign it to the bullet layer. All right. And that gives us that. Now let us, there's one more thing. Man, I really got ahead of myself. We're going to do one more thing to this bullet. We're going to come into a scripts folder and we're going to create a new scripts. I'm so used to being able to immediately, oh, here we go, mono behavior script. I am blind, obviously. And we're going to actually create a new script called a bullet collider. Right, we want to actually track the collisions. So for a bullet collider, we're going to name it bullet collider. We're going to crack that boy up. And here we go. Over here, I don't know why I have two player controllers. We're going to delete those at the moment, or not delete them. We're just going to make them go away for the moment. And we'll reopen one as we need to. What we want in this is we're going to go ahead and destroy the game object. And by just calling game object, it's, ooh, that is not how you spell destroy. We're going to destroy the game object. And the game object refers to the game object that this is attached to. So this is attached to the, we're going to attach this to the bullet. So it is going to destroy, on start, it's going to start a timer. And it is going to destroy the game object in 5 seconds. That's what the 5F is for. 5 is a float. Don't really have to have as a float for there. But in 5 seconds, if the bullet is still in existence right now, we are going to destroy it. We're going to modify this in a bit for our object, our bullet pooling. But for right now, we want it to just go away after 5 seconds. And so that is what we are going to do with this. And let's go ahead and we're going to set this up as well. We don't have anything to shoot at right yet. But we're going to go ahead and create another function, private void on collision enter, which automatically gives us collision and collision. And so we are going to, when the bullet collides with something, we are also going to destroy game object. It's going to destroy the bullet. Okay, so we're going to save this. Mostly I just want it for the start function. We're going to, once again, we're going to modify these in just a little bit. But we want to go ahead and just put these in here as a placeholder at the moment. So that basically we can, for our bullet, drag our bullet collider onto it, and we are good to go with that. Okay. That gives us that. And then let's see if we've got in our project settings. We don't have a shoot, but we've got an attack. So let's go ahead and just play off of the attack. This is fine for the moment. So let's go back into, let's go back into our player controller, right? That's where we're going to want to tie this to. And we're going to add, we're going to go ahead and add, I'm going to go ahead and make a little note here and say that this is for movement, just to make it easier to read when we go. And then we're going to set it up for shooting. And let's go ahead with this. We're going to create another serialized field. We're going to private game object it. Can't spell private. Private game object. And this is going to be our bullet prefab. So we can just call it bullet prefab. And then we also, like we've done before, since it's the same thing, we're also going to get a reference to our bullet launch position. Right, we need to know where this bullet is launching from. And then to shoot, we only want to shoot when we're not shooting. So we're going to set a private boolean that's going to check whether true or false if we're shooting. I like to personally remind myself that it's a boolean in my variables by using some form of a verb. Is it shooting? Something that could lead to a question mark is shooting. And we're going to start it off as false, right? We're not shooting when the game starts. So we'll have it that way. And then we're going to call this, like we did before, we also need a reference to the public input action reference. Action reference. And this one, instead of movement, we're going to call this shooting. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create another one. So like we have player movement. Here's our function. We're going to create another function, void shoot gun. Right. So if we can, we're going to shoot the gun. So for this, if we shoot the gun, we're going to change is shooting, right, to true. We have shot. If we've made it in here, we now just need to say we've shooting the gun. We don't have a number of bullets yet. We're not tracking our bullets. We could put a lot of tracking information here if we want to have a bullet inventory. We could remove one from that inventory. We could track the number of shots that we fired if we want to. If we're tracking shots fired, we could be tracking our shooting percentage. So we could be tracking objects hit versus the number of shots fired. Lots of different things could happen in this moment in time. We are not doing that at this moment. We're just going to shoot. So we're going to actually go ahead and create our own game object within this, and we're going to call it bullet. And what we're going to do this, we're going to instantiate, which means basically create something from a prefab, right? We're going to use our bullet prefab to create a game object now in the game. And we're going to instantiate that prefab, which is a game object, as a game object. So we've set it up as a game object that we're going to do there. If you remember, we start with saying the bullet is not active, right? When we bring it in, we've created it that is not visible. So we're going to do sort of what it's recommending here, but we're going to do set active, and we're going to make it true. We're going to actually turn that thing on so we can actually see it. And then we're going to, we don't know where we're going to be in relation to where that bullet was created. And so we need to move that bullet to the launch position. So we're going to change bullet transform the position to the bullet launch position, transform position. And we also want to make sure that we actually change the rotation, because right, we can rotate, the gun's going to rotate, and so we need the bullet to rotate because we're going to be shooting that bullet out straight in front of us. So we're going to say the bullet dot transform rotation is equal to the bullet launch position transform rotation. That way that bullet is going to act like it is coming directly out of the gun, even though it's technically not. We're spawning it in front. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add force to it, right? So that's why we need that rigid body. We're adding physics to it. And so we're going to get the component, right? So if we look at our bullet, the bullet has the rigid body component. So we are going to be getting that component, rigid body. And because of that, we can now add force to it. There's a lot of different forces. Or add force has a couple different force modes. But what we're going to do first is we're going to say bullet launch. We're adding force in the direction of that launch position, transform up. We're going to give that bullet a speed of 50. This can be a variable depending upon gun, depending on bullet if you want to go into that. Lots of different things. And then this is where we have a few different things. We have different force modes, acceleration, changes, acceleration. We just want impulse. We are just putting a nice big, like gunpowder, blast behind it that's going to make it go shoot at 50 speed in the up direction based on the bullet's launch position. All right, and then what we're going to do, right? So we don't want to, this is a handgun. This is not a machine gun. So we're going to want to create a little pause, right? So we switch back and forth from is shooting true and false. We start out with is shooting is false. We switch it to true, but we can only shoot when it's false. And we're going to put that information in just a moment. But we need a way to switch back from true to false. So we're going to create a little timer in here. We're going to do that through IE numerator. And we're going to call this shooting pause. This allows us to do is run a basically a timer within our code here. And we're going to do that, we need to do yield, return a new, wait 4 seconds. And this is where we're going to set a time. We're going to say we can't shoot more than every half a second. So 0.5 F, that's the F for float again. And once that timer has gone off, we're going to say that is shooting is now false. So what that's going to do is come in here, which actually, let's just set that. What this does, so the IE enumerator is a coroutine, so we're going to start that coroutine, which allows, the coroutine allows for it to be running at the same time, like I said. So start coroutine, we're going to call shooting pause, and because it's a function, we're going to call it as a function. We can pass data if we wanted to, we don't need to. If we had something special like, oh, you can shoot a machine gun faster than you can shoot a handgun, we can pass what gun it is and then pull that information here if we needed to. We're just going to straight say you can shoot every half a second, and then it changes to false. So it allows us to refire that gun, and once again, to fire the gun in general, what we want is up here in our update. So after we'll check movement, we'll go ahead and check if we can shoot. Let's just, as we did before, this is movement based, just in case we need to make some other changes to it. And then we'll do, this is shooting based. And we'll say if is shoot, we're going to do our exclamation point before is shooting. If you haven't done this one yet, so you can check with if, we usually check whether it's true or false. It can also be checking specific numbers. Often it's used for booleans, so we can check just, instead of having to type is shooting equal to false, right? If I type false, cannot type false, and then do something, right? What we can do is shorthand this to just exclamation point, which is code for not or false is shooting. So just, this is straight out checking is shooting false, which makes it really easy for our code. And then as long as it is false, we could also check some other things like here, like do you actually have a gun? Do you have enough bullets to fire the gun? So if is shooting is false and the shooting, like we set up right here, our input action reference shooting, if shooting dot action triggered, oh, that's shotting. No, we're not shotting. Shooting dot action triggered, because it's a trigger. If this happens, go ahead and shoot the gun. We could break this into lines if you wanted to. It just is, it's short. We don't really need to. So as long as shooting is false and we've pulled the trigger, then we go ahead and shoot the gun, which automatically says shooting is true. And so even if we're holding down the trigger, we're only going to get one shot off. All right, let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and over here, back into our Unity, we can come out of our bullet, go to our player, right? So now we've got a spot for, we can click on a bullet prefab or prefabs and drag our bullet prefab into here. We'll drag our launch point from the gun into the launch point. And then like our movement, what we're going to do is we're going to click here and we want player attack in this case. All right, so with this saved, we should be able to play. Go back to my scene so we can see a little bit better. I'll scroll out so we can see from both sides. All right, and now I've got my movement there. It is not working with that. Let's, oh, there we go. It's attached to my X button. So as you can see now, I am pushing that button as fast as I can, but not as many bullets are coming out as there were. And then you can see here in the hierarchy that if we hit 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's going to delete. Apparently I count my seconds a little faster, but it automatically deletes for us, right? That's great. If we're just doing a few bullets, that's wonderful. But what if we have a machine gun? What if we're firing thousands of rounds? What if we just need that moment so that so many bullets are going? That is where the object pooling design pattern comes into play. So let's go ahead and finish that part of this, and then we will call this tutorial over, since we're already getting a bit longer than I wanted to go with this, but this is a good start for where we're going to go with this project. Okay, we've got a gun, we've got a bullet. Let's create a pool of bullets so that we don't ever have to constantly be making and destroying, which then leads to garbage cleanup or memory starting to fill up, problems. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create in our scripts folder, we're going to create a new script, another mono behavior, and we're going to call it object pool. You can call it bullet pool if you wanted to, but we're just going to call it object pool. Hell, let's call it bullet pool. That way, if we ever wanted to create this, is another way you could do enemies, other things that are happening in the environment. So we'll just call it the bullet pool, where all the cool kids swim. Okay, what we're gonna do? Sure, we'll reload that. That's fine. What we want to do is in here we're going to create another. Once again, this could be private or public, but we're going to do serialized field private game object, and we're going to call this our bullet to pool. That is not the pool I was looking for. And so what we need to do is we need to set how many bullets do we think could be used in our scene at one time. This can be made dynamic. We're going to make it static. Dynamic in such a way as you create a pool, and if there ever is trying to grab another one, but there's not one there, you can then add one to the pool. We're just going to take a wild shot and say we're never going to need more than 15 bullets. So we're going to say we're going to set this as a private integer max pool size is 15, right? In our, bullets are being destroyed after 5 seconds. We're probably never going to be able to get 15 out into the world at the same time. And so this works through using stacks. And so a stack is basically, it's like a list or an array. It's just a stack. It's a way of allowing things to move in and out of the, you move things in and out of the stack, much in the same way as any way of storing objects. So we're going to create a private stack. Oops, not stack trace. Sometimes autofill is great. Other times not. We're going to create a stack, and you need to create the stack of what object type it is. So it's going to be a stack of game objects. And so with that, we're going to call that stack inactive bullets. And then we need to set it up that it's a new stack of game objects. All right, why are you behaving terribly? We need We probably need a different using here. Let's try using system collections. Is that gonna fix it? Started trying to. And then let's do using system collections generic. There it is. We got there. So we need to add these two usings in to be using the ability to do the collections with this. All right. So what we're going to do, these are going to actually, we don't need an update with this. So we can delete the update. That we are not updating. This is only going to be used to when it's called. So there is no update to this. And what we're going to be doing, because we're going to be getting this, interacting with this script from outside of the script, we need two public functions. And the first one is going to be, we have said we're firing the gun. Now we need to get a bullet from the pool to be able to fire it. And so because of that, we're going to, instead of a public void, we actually are returning a game object. We're giving something, passing something along when we do it. And so we're going to call this get bullet, can't spell bullet, from pool. This is going to stay red underlined until we make it return something guaranteed, whether that's returning the bullet or returning no, you don't get anything. So what we're going to say is while the inactive bullet count, inactive bullets, so that is our stack, right, is greater than 0. We can't, if it's less than 0, if it's 0 or less, there are no bullets to return. So we need to make sure there's at least a bullet there. So as long as that is true, we're going to say a variable object. This is the object we're giving over, which is the bullet, is we are going to then pop off, which it already fills this in for us, inactive bullets.pop. It's popping one of those bullets off, and it's getting ready to allow us to pass it along. And so what we do want to do, though, is we want to do a double check on this. We want to make sure the object does not, once again, that exclamation point does not equal null. So as long as that object is not nothing, which it shouldn't be, but just in case something weird happens, we don't want to pass along nothing. We want to go ahead and set that object, set active to true, right? Because all our bullets start as false, or active false. You don't see that. We want to turn it on. And then so we turn on the bullet and we return the object to what was calling it. Now, we've returned that, but this is still red because not all code paths, as it says here, return a value. So if the while doesn't go through, we just need to be able to return null. Don't return anything. So in a weird case that there is nothing there, we're not going to pass anything along. As long as there are bullets in our inactive bullets pool, we're good to go. Right? Okay, that's going to go ahead and take the bullet from the pool. Sorry about this, hold on. All right, sorry about that. All right, once again, so this is, as long as there's a bullet in the pool, it's going to pop it off and it's going to send it, remove it from the pool. So it's going to take one away. That's what the pop takes care of. And then it's going to pass it to the shooting application. It's going to put the bullet live into our scene, and it's going to go through and fire it. and then eventually it's going to get destroyed. And so we need to be able to return it to our pool, right? If we just destroy it, then it's gone and we never can use it again. So we need to be able to use it again. So we do that through, once again, a public function, but once again, for this time, it's not returning something, it's just taking something in. So this can just be a void, and this can be called return bullet to the pool, right? When we're done with it, let's put it back where we got it from. And so we're going to actually be passing into this a game object, and we'll call it, let's call it object to deactivate, right? We don't need it anymore right now. We're going to put it back in the pool. We're returning to the pool, but we needed to deactivate it, right? We need to turn it back off. It makes no sense. So we're going to do a quick check on this. We're going to see if the object to deactivate doesn't equal null, right? We don't want, if there's nothing there's nothing we can do with it. So as long as it is not null, we're going to say that the object to deactivate, we're going to set its active to false. We're turning it off. You don't get to see it anymore. And then we just need to add it back to our stack. And to add it to the stack, we're just going to do inactive bullets. Inactive bullets dot push. We're pushing that back in. Object to deactivate. That's all we got to do. Okay. Actually, we're going to do one other thing here, because this is a weird thing that happens from time to time. And we're just going to make sure it is not possible. So in addition, before we turn it, right after we turn it off, right, set active doesn't remove it from play or the scene. It just turns off the visibility of it, basically. And it's not being affected anymore. So we're actually right before we turn it off, and you'll never be able to see this because it's happening technically at the same exact moment in time, microseconds apart. We are going to, for the object to deactivate, we are going to get component rigid body. Can't spell rigid body. Dot the velocity. We'll do the angular velocity equals vector 3.0. Okay, why that? So every once in a while, and it is not consistent, which, I mean, go figure, right? Sometimes it remembers the velocity between moments. And so then when you grab that bullet again, it's not starting with a velocity of 0. It's starting with a velocity of the 50 that we applied previously. And so now you're multiplying that again. So with this case, you're never going to have that moment where that bullet all of a sudden already has speed and then you're adding more speed to it. So this just verifies that that is going to be not possible. And it's just a good way to just make sure everything's where it should be. Okay. Perfect. So the last thing we need to do is we got to set up our pool, right? We now have a way to get something from the pool. We've got a way to return it to the pool. We know that the max size of the pool is 15, but we don't have a pool yet. We have the start of it, but we don't have it there yet. So what we want to first do is check and see that bullets to pool is not null, right? That game object, there is some game object that we are going to pool. And so we're going to make sure that that's not false. And this is going to happen once again in the start. This is called once right before that first execution of an update, which is not going to happen for us, but it's going to happen kind of right after the mono behavior is created. There are a few other things that come into play that we can play with later, which we'll get into, but not for today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say for int I equals 0, I is less than the max pool size. And then we're creating a loop that's going to create a whole bunch of bullets. And so we're going to do a variable, new object, and we're going to instantiate, let's actually call it new bullet. Why not? New bullet, instantiate, just like we did previously when we were shooting, where we brought that bullet in as a new item. That's what we're doing again. But this time we're just going to, for bullet to pool, right? And then we're going to say new bullet, set active to false. Just in case for some reason it's not already, we're going to make sure it is. We don't want those bullets to be seen floating around no matter where. And then, like we did here in adding it to our stack, our pool, we're going to do inactive bullets, push the new bullet. And that's going to build it. So it's checking to see if the max pool, if the number of bullets in the pool is, as long as it is less than 15, it's going to run through this and make another one and add it to the pool up till we have 15. And then it's going to stop and we're going to be done. We have a pool of bullets. Let's go ahead and save. Okay. We are going to go ahead and eventually go back to Unity. My computer is thinking really hard about it. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and create an empty game object here. And I like to just call it game controller. I put a lot of the stuff that is game related in here that is not tied to one thing specifically, but just tied to the game in general. And the bullet pool is more that style, right? You could probably attach this to the player, but I like to, if something happens to the player, then that gets respawned. So the game controller really won't get respawned or restarted. So we've got this, I'm adding it to our game controller, and then we want to add our bullet prefab to that, right? So we've got that now. All right, and now we want to go back in and update our code in our player controller and our bullet collider. So let's go ahead and I'm here. Player controller. Let's do it. So we're no longer needing to worry about this, right? This was just grabbing our bullet prefab, creating it as a new game object, and setting it to true. We don't need to do that anymore. We are going to be taking care of that on its own now. And so what we're going to do is, and so we also don't need, where is it? We don't need our, you know what, we'll still use the bullet prefab. It'll be fine. Actually, that works great for us. So what we're going to do, sorry for getting confusing for a moment, but we can actually still use that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to delete this out now. And let's actually just change this. So bullet prefab, we're going to change this to bullet, which means we just don't have to change the code here. So what we're going to do is we still need to now populate what that game object is, right? So we're going to now say bullet is equal to, and we need to, I don't know, let me change this real quick too. We need, before we go any further, let me add one more thing now. In addition to our shooting, we need to go ahead and get a reference to our game controller. And so what we're going to do, there's a couple ways that you can do this. What we're going to do is we're going to not hard code it. We're going to make this system do it for us. So we're going to, it's attached to the shooting, so that's fine. We're going to create a private game object. We're just going to let it stay private game object, and we're going to call it game controller. And so we want to, on start now, we want to connect that, our game controller to our game controller object. And so what we can do is game controller is equal to find object by name. What is it? I got my order wrong. Hold on. It is game object.find, and then we're going to find. We need to make sure it's exactly the same way here. So sometimes it's easiest to come in and copy it. And that does that. So now what we're doing is we're saying, hey, there's this game object called game controller. Find it. You don't want to do this for everything. This is really for one-time little things that are going to be consistent, that you're going to use a lot in your code. Otherwise, it usually then works better to make it a direct connection. But for this, we could use it in multiple things. We probably will. So this allows us to set that game object up. And so now we can say that game controller dot get component, because once again, our game controller is where we have our bullet pool script. And so we want our bullet pool, right? That's attached to it. And then we want to get bullet from the pool. This allows us to get that bullet from there. It's popping it off. It's going to provide it to us. Then we set its position to the new position. We set its rotation to the new rotation. And we're good to go. That is going to allow us to shoot it. So let's go ahead and save. That pulls it. And then we can just real quick, we'll just copy this code here in our start, because we'll attach it to our bullet collider. This one we do need to do it this way anyway. So we're going to create our private game object, game controller. That takes care of that. Okay. We now can't just destroy, right? We don't want to destroy, because that negates what we were trying to do, right? If we do it that way, we have this problem that it's destroying it from the pool and it's never going back. We don't want that. We want to put it back in the pool. And so what we can do here, let's say we still want it to die after a period of time though. So what we can end up doing is we can create we'll add it here as a private float. Cannot spell float to save my life today. and we'll just call it start time. And so what we want to do then is say, okay, from the moment this spawns or comes back in, actually we want to take this, sorry, my bad, hold on. Start doesn't work with this because start is having it from when it initially starts. We need it to not be when it starts. We need it to be when it turns back on. And when it turns back on is void on enable, actually. And so we will drag these now out of there. We don't need start. We need to know when it is being enabled. And so what we're going to do is when it turns back on, we're going to set it start time to time.time. What is the game time at this moment in time? And it's going to pop it right in there. And so for this, we will use an update now. And we will say if time.time minus start time. Why did it give me a space? Minus start time is greater than 5 seconds. Right? So it's doing the same thing, it's just doing it in a different way. We are going to go ahead and run, bring this down here, another function, private void return, oh, come on, let me just type return bullet to pool. And so what we can do here, this is what's going to send it back to the pool so we can use it again. And so for this, we're going to do game component or game controller dot get component bullet. Hold on, make sure I'm wording it right. Get bullet per pool, return bullet to pool is what we need. Always helps to remember which one you're trying to do. Which, oh, the the component we want is bullet pool. I will eventually remember my life. Bullet pool, and we want to return bullet to the pool. And this is where we, in our bullet pool, right? We're passing into it what we want to deactivate. So we need to deactivate this game object, which is, nope, not this game controller, this game object. This is the bullet that we have. And that's going to return it, and it's going to, when it does that, it's going to come in here to our pool, and it's going to set its velocity 0, and it's going to turn it off, and it's going to pop it back into our stack so we can use it again. All right, so all we need to do now is here, so after 5 seconds, we're going to return bullet to the pool, run that function, and if we have a collision, we will do some other things, but we will end up in the same spot, returning the bullet to the pool. Okay. Hopefully this is making a little bit of sense. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense here. Go ahead and save. We should now, when we hit play now, we're going to see 15 bullets get made right out the chute. And they're all going to be off. There they are. We have bullet clones, 15 of them. So now, when we shoot, you can see them lighting up. They're turning on, right? But it's changing. So why is it changing? It's hitting that 5 seconds, and it's popping that bullet back into our pool. So we hit fire, that bullet clone is fired, it's brought in. 5 seconds later, it gets returned back to the pool. Gets turned off, is non-interactable, technically non-interactable anymore, and it goes back to our pool, waiting to be used again. So it still has to make those 15 bullets, but it only makes those 15 bullets once, and it makes them really quick right at the beginning. So you can make 1,000 bullets. You have a machine gun that is literally just chewing through bullets, but it only is making those once. It's not making them over and over and over again. So, okay. As far as I can tell from my timer on this is a long ass video. I appreciate you making it through here. I hope to God you watch this on double speed, which I will make that comment in class or in the announcement that I'll make. But hopefully this gets you started. Hopefully you've learned something new from this. And once again, we're going to be building on this in class. And so please do these. Please stay on top of these. I will be asking for, not this time, but probably after the next one or maybe the one after that, I will actually be asking you to submit a small video of this gameplay build showing that you are staying up to date with this, because while this is not exactly your game, we're going to try and cover as many different aspects of building and making a game in Unity in 3D game dev as possible throughout the semester. So please stay up to date on this. Take the minutes. Once again, I apologize this video is longer than I had planned, but hopefully this gives you a nice good start into learning and playing with some fun different things with Unity. Until the next video or until I see you in class, have a great day, and I will talk to you all soon.